First of all, I must say that I was very surprised that I could be here because I just asked to be on this, in this dialogue, and Lorenzo put me on the program because what I'm going to be presenting here is a study that is still at its infancy. It's at the beginning part. But I think also I must put a context for the people who are coming from outside of South Africa. Why are we talking about service delivery protest in South Africa? There has been a history of apartheid planning, where black people have been put in the periphery of the urban centers. All of you, when you landed in Cape Town, you saw all the tin shacks and that were scattered all over. And as you move into town, you start to see formal buildings. If you go further to the beach, you'll see mansions and so on. That is the history that the government has inherited. When the new government took place, there had been a rapid urbanization of people moving into the cities. Most of those people would move even in the peripheries of what we call townships and put in these informal structures. So there are two things now that are happening. The new government had promised to build houses, and people are in a hurry to be able to get their own piece of their own structure. So public service delivery is usually around two things. One, the things that the government has promised to give them, their own houses, their own schools, their own roads, or is directed towards the local government when there are things that are not being delivered to them, like they don't have electricity, they don't have water, they don't have roads. So that is the context of public service delivery, and it can be extremely violent. We are in the season now because we are facing local government election on one hand. On the other hand, as I'm going to talk, there's continuous xenophobic attacks against foreign nationals who come into the township space. So it's open season. Every time you open a TV, you'll see the urban violence that takes place in South Africa. And what you will see probably are scenes like these. And I want you to note, and I will not say much, the gender and the age. You will find them all, it's a uniform pattern of people clutching a stone, right about to throw it to somebody. Oh, it does that? Yeah. The numbers are estimated to have escalated to over 10,000 incidences of violence. I don't know how they count these, but that is what statistics say. But funny enough, these are less in more urbanized communities like in Johannesburg, in Pretoria, in Cape Town. They do happen in smaller cities where local government doesn't seem to have a proper handle of dealing with these. And they are always marked by the destruction of public property. Schools, libraries, community centers are targeted to be burned down. And many people are calling it a rebellion of the poor, but also it's a rebellion of the youth, the unemployed, but mostly men. Why is it? Okay. What are you saying? How does this thing work? I have to press again?
When I get to the next slide.
Yeah. No, this thing, the whole slide must come in. Yeah, that is the whole slide. I don't know why it's rationing me. This study is a study that has been commissioned by the local government sector education and training authority, because primarily it wants to understand a few things, whether the skills development can play a role in mitigating this service delivery protests. The local government sector education authority is tasked with a responsibility of developing skills in its area. So how does this body identify useful skills to develop and which geographical areas? Which skills are scarce in terms of municipality services? And how are these to be developed? Which skills are related to the economic opportunities that may exist in such troubled areas? And what is the social plan that will translate the skills developed into service delivery? How does education turn situations of violent protest into legitimate conflict? Oh. There are trends in the public service violence and conflict we see. Most of the time, it will start with being a community violence, and then it just moves into xenophobic attacks. All of a sudden, foreign national shops are being attacked, they are being burned down, they are being looted. But also the role of police is important to note that it's not neutral. They usually are protagonists in this plot because they will instigate. Sometimes it's young children as young as 8-year-old and 10-year-olds holding a stone without doing anything. And all of a sudden, the police will act in a particular way that will just explode the whole situation. Sometimes the police are visible by not protecting foreign nationals, and they keep a low profile. In fact, there is a particular caption that we just heard on TV in the couple of weeks ago. We had these incidences in Soweto, where the police themselves were seen going to the shop that was being looted and taking a few toilet rolls and put it in their own cars. And that was quite telling about where the police are situated in this situation. But the apartheid protest patterns are still being seen throughout. It is the libraries, it is the clinics, and it is more the symbolism of the state that are being destroyed. And many of times it's believed that it's not only the young people. In fact, many times the people who have done the research here, there are politicians behind, politicians who are disgruntled about what is happening with the elections, within the local government, and then they set the young people to go and engage. But there is also some patriarchal tendencies that tend to be noticed, because women who are in the public services, they tend to be attacked more when there is this, in order to unseat them from the seats of power in local government. So I think we've talked about that, about community protests morphing into xenophobic attacks. What we have done is to try and understand what sparks this violence, because you cannot be able to develop a intervention without actually understanding. We have now come into the 3 theories. One is that we are dealing with an issue of citizens claiming their citizenship. Struggle against apartheid was a struggle against citizenship when black people were excluded. But now we find a new type of exclusion, where people who were used to be on the same level in the townships now are beginning to be differentiated. There are government officials who have got more resources, who control tenders, who are distributed according to how they wish. But there are also people who are excluded. And therefore, these insurgencies are nothing more than a notion of expanded citizenship in order to exclude those people. But they are also appropriated to the foreign nationals to say, you are not part of this, you are not a South African. And so we have got to be able to deal with this expanded notion of citizens when it concerns the same people who live in the same area, but also when it concerns South Africans versus foreign nationals, when it concerns men versus women. So that is one theory. The other theory that we're coming to, no, go back. You can tell that I'm very skilled in this. The other theory that we are coming to look into is around urban violence. It's a phenomenon that you find not in South Africa, but in sub-Saharan Africa. If you take normal economic development, individuals move from rural areas to urban areas when there are opportunities to work. And usually it has always been, you move from primary economic activities like agriculture to spaces where there is manufacturing and there are jobs. But in sub-Saharan Africa and also in Africa, people have just moved without any jobs. And the issue then is, what is it that is going to have to change in these areas where people are living? Because our townships and informal settlements have been traditionally dormitories where people go and sleep in order to wake up in the morning and go to the urban area and participate in the economy, those who can. There is a great debate about township economies, but also we have to look and say, is this an opportunity for local government to develop the infrastructure in order to be able to create economic opportunities? The third and last theory we're working on is basically looking at those spatial inequalities and skills and tapping into evolutionary economic geography perspectives and economic histories, because we come from a particular history in this country where even educational institutions, I'm not talking about schools, post-school educational institutions are not found in the urban, in the townships. Young people, they have got to go back, to go again into urban areas in order to access those. So you find that especially these areas that tend to produce a lot of violence, they have a particular pattern where about employment, about labor, about even housing tends to differentiate itself because of the ability of people to pay. There is a residential sorting mechanism. It starts from apartheid, but it continues. And therefore we need to find out if people are living here, there are no jobs. Are there jobs somewhere else? What will be the process of getting these people to go to those jobs? And if there are jobs here that cannot be done, there is no water, there is no electricity, there are no roads, what is it about these people? Is it a matter of a mismatch of people living in areas where they could develop the jobs? But skills in South Africa development is not just a technical problem, it's a highly political problem of who has been denied and how it's been developed. We have got to be able to engage with that. And if the skills themselves have been used to exclude people from economic activity, from being citizens of this country, now we have got to understand that the service delivery protests are about a demand to include people into being part of South Africa. But we do not know how to go about it. This is as far as most of the thinking. So we are asking, which are the scarce skills that we need to look at, and how are these going to be developed? What is the social plan, and how do they get translated into service delivery? How do you use education to turn the situation of violent protests into legitimate conflict? What does that mean, if I can just explain that? It's one thing to be able to send individual people to say, go and get skills. But we're talking about communities who are already mobilized to take a certain position against government. So there must be a position about community education in order to be able to get a community to face a particular direction. But we have a local government that is so preoccupied with financial management skills, because they are always, you heard yesterday that the problem we have with our local government, they underspend their money, and they think that if they can have financial skills, they will fix that. They do not understand that there are so many other things that they cannot do in the local government that they need to have skills for. So we have a number of methodology questions that that's the last one, trying to look at, and we were hoping that you could add to your wisdom as to how does the local government sit identify these useful skills to deploy, and which geographical areas which skills are scarce, which skills are related to the economic opportunities that exist in such troubled areas, and what is the social plan, how do we use education to turn around this situation? Are these questions relevant or appropriate? Best way to collect this information, and what information will be useful to the LG sector? I think that is the end of the story so far. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Peliwe.